This channel is supported by Truefire.
Well, what is this all about then? It's the Truefire Summer Music Festival. What I'm going to tell you about, you can get 1 month of All Access for just $1. The All Access, you can dip in and out of every single course on Truefire, so that's a really great way to get some awesome courses down you.
So I was just going through YouTube the other day, and this, well, it might have been yesterday, it was probably yesterday, and this clip from Bradshaw and Tim Pierce came up about why pros don't use modelers on sessions.
The digital devices that you put on the floor are great, but the minute you have to start paging through menus, you're going to lose the room. It's much better to have a pedal with a knob that goes, because you don't really have 10 seconds. If somebody says, yeah, can you make it a little more this way? Boom, boom, and then go.
Yeah.
That's the guy that gets called. That's the guy that gets hired. It has to be instant.
Now, I thought it was kind of a provocative title. I can't find actually where this full clip is taken from. There's a video talk about recording next to the Legends, but I don't think it might have been from a wider conversation and they just clipped this bit, or it might be from a course of Rhett's or something. But in any case, it's Tim Pierce, and I thought it was an interesting comment because Tim's board has 3 digital, essentially modelling devices with menus on it, and I thought, okay, well, what's he getting at here? So in this video, I kind of wanted to kind of discuss this, like the ups and the downs and the pros and the cons of some of the digital gear that I'm sure you're going to be familiar with if you're watching this, and certainly I am. And then the difference in this video, this intro here. So I'm going to start with an HX Effects, and then when I go to take the solo, I'm using the Kernom Ridge, and I'm just changing one knob on the Kernom Ridge, which is the mood knob, and you know, seeing what happens. we're talking here about Tim Pierce, Landau, and Lukather. I think in the sort of heyday of this recording stuff, was this not when there was like loads of this rack unit stuff about? And you think about Landau's tone, certainly at the time, and Lukather's, they were using these Lexicon pieces of gear, which are super menu heavy. Now, unless they were only using presets on there, you know, you imagine you go to Mike Landau. I presume most of the time people were looking specifically for that sound, right? Because it's what is all over the records from the time. But if you were to say, like, surely it wouldn't be that easy at that time to say to one of these guys, like, actually, like, I feel like that chorus is just a bit too much. Like, if it's in this Bradshaw rig, how would that even work? That's a question for me. How would that work at the time? I wasn't there. But I presume like it wouldn't actually be that easy to make edits on those sorts of rigs. Like presumably more difficult than it would be to make an edit on a modeler in 2025. I'm presuming. That could be totally wrong. But like say you look at Lexicon, I think Leon Todd has done some videos with a Lexicon PCM. Like these pieces of rack gear are quite involved, quite menu heavy. You think about like Roland GP, whatever they are, GP10 is it, from around the time. Though making edits on those kind of things, like a Mesa Boogie tri-axis, right? I don't know if Steve Lukather ever used one of those. All of these pieces of gear that people use tend to, in a lot of cases, I think, be a little bit on the more complex side than not. So that was kind of my first kind of thought on this. And then my second thought was, well, what about Tom Bukovac, Dan Huff, Tim Pierce himself? Like all of these players have a modelling device or a digital multi-effect on their board. So Tom Bukovac has the Line 6 M5. Dan Huff has talked about using the Line 6 M5, and even for drive. The one kind of difference with that is that it basically has like, it's like a virtual pedal board kind of, in that you bring up your thing, but it's not quite as menu heavy because it's got dedicated knobs for each effect, or 5 slots, and then I think you can edit each effect with a few knobs on there, right? So you could quickly make some changes. Then I kind of looked at some other boards, like even Rhett has got on his board, you know, he's had the HX Stomp XL. Tim Pierce has got the delay one, the LVX delay, and 2 HX1s, interestingly enough, which I think is kind of like, I guess the way he's using them be for one effect at a time, presumably. And then you kind of get rid of, because it's the HX1, it doesn't necessarily get as complicated as the HX Stomp, but there's definitely still menus within there. And actually making edits is not just as simple as changing one knob. Then I thought about someone like Philcox Littlefield, who is a session guy in Nashville. Now he's got an HX Effects, HX Stomp, and H9 that he uses for some of this stuff. I think, so this is the way that I think Soul's talked about some of this stuff, is that he's got kind of go-to presets for bits and pieces, and he might use them for like, he called it like producer candy. So you'd have like a track that runs alongside the session, that essentially like the producer could go in and sort of take clips from. It might be like more lap steely stuff, or like little bendy stuff, ambient type things, cool bits and pieces. But the way that he seems to kind of deal with it is that you like your H9 or your HX Effects or your HX Stomp is going to be doing like a few effects, turn them on or off or whatever. Now I can definitely relate to this as someone who's gigged some of this gear. Obviously I'm not on like, you know, Grammy award winning sessions and stuff like that, but I think we can all relate to that kind of feeling where it's like, oh, I need to get an extra effect in here, and you're like, what do I do? But I can also sort of sense this with, like, say you've got an effects board, you imagine you've got like a gig rig type thing on it, or a quartermaster, or whatever it is. Like if someone says something kind of esoteric, like, oh, I need a little more grunt or whatever, I don't know, where on the board do you go for that? So to me, what it really was a clear indicator of is that you need to be able to kind of quickly be able to do something and something that other people are asking. So like if it was like, you turn all the delay and reverb off, can you quickly do that on your device? If they wanted it like to be a totally different kind of tone, could you quickly do that? And that's the one drawback, I think, with a lot of pedal boards, is that if you made that pedal board, like how versatile really is it? Now I don't know to what extent do people even really want like the most versatile pedal board in the world. Like if you listen to a lot of Nashville records or whatever, like some of the records that are still actually using guitar stuff all the time, like it's going to be pretty within like a wheelhouse. Like it'd probably be either a matchless DC30 or a Fender Deluxe Reverb of some form, or Bassman, or a Plexi, and within the realms of that, probably they're going to be using a Nobel's ODR1, and probably they'll be using some sort of like tape delay thing. Like there isn't a huge palette of like crazy tones. Like more important than anything seems to be like the guitar amp tone, and like the actual take itself is, to me, it doesn't seem like some of the crazy effects like ring mods or whatever that you might be able to do with your modeling gear might not actually be required for most things. I think sometimes there's this tune, I think it might be by Jordan Davis, like I Ain't Saying. You can hear, I think it might be Derek Wells on that, but that's got a whammy on it. But they're definitely using a pitch up effect on that one. And you think, well, that must just be someone who like knows their gear well enough to be able to dial that sort of thing in, or they come along with like their presets that they use. But you think, well, that wouldn't have happened with most traditional gear unless they had a DT whammy on the board. Like creativity in the moment is a really cool thing, but also creativity that comes from like modeling presets or, you know, digital gear presets, I think could be a real thing too. But just sitting down with the Kernom Ridge with this, so on the one hand, like it's like a capable MIDI device, you know, sort of digital brain analog heart, like that Chase Bliss thing, but the difference in getting like a drastically different tone with this, because of this mood knob and the way this kind of basically changes the clipping section and rewires lots of stuff internally, you get a drastically different sort of mood, vibe, whatever you want to call it. That, I think, is probably what Tim Pierce is talking about here. It's like a thing that can quickly get you the tonal result that you're looking for, and also like really clever stuff like just the mids knob, you know, like most drive pedals won't have that. It's like, oh, it's a bit honky. Well, actually, I've got a mids knob on this specific pedal. I can just turn that down or whatever. You can imagine that would be a really useful sort of studio tool. Whereas the HX Stomp or the HX Effect or something like that, I can see if you don't really know your way around it, like the back of your glove or whatever, then definitely. And I've definitely been in the situation where you're like, right, how would I do this? And then you're thinking, right, well, okay, you press the wrong thing. Maybe you lose the preset that you were working on. I sort of relate to that being a thing where it's like, if you're super under pressure, then having something that you can just quickly make an adjustment on. And I guess that's why things that just work in this regard, like a Strymon Flint, or, you know, things that are like digital complex stuff, but under the hood, and they just give you some simple controls on top that maybe do many things with just one knob. I think that is really the heart of maybe where the future of some of this stuff needs to be heading in order for there to be more uptake. Because I certainly think that actually this kind of gear is far more versatile, and if you were looking for a Swiss Army knife type thing, then there's no reason, and like all these pros actually do have them on their boards, there's no reason that these things are not like vitally important, like the Eventide H9, all this sort of stuff. Like they are on these folks' boards. It's just that I think there is still work to be done to make these even quicker to use and quicker to get the results that people are looking for from, such that you wouldn't then be saying this is why people don't use them. It's like, well, they're absolutely part of my rig, use them all the time. And I think that's what you're actually seeing with some of these younger players now, like Soul Philcox Littlefield, who is using like Helix, HX Stomp. You know, Quad Cortex is getting used a lot on the road these days. Even Mark Tremonti using one of them now, you know, experimenting with one. Axe Effects has been, you know, on the road for years. I think it's definitely true that these things are getting used. It's just that there's like little pockets. I guess Nashville is like a little bit of a bubble in some ways anyway, where this is one of the few places where like real old school type guitar stuff is getting recorded anyway. So maybe that's like a little bit of the bubble. But even those guys are using this stuff and have done for years now. So it's kind of, yeah, kind of an interesting thing, I think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you using digital gear on your board? I think there's so much uptake in this now that, you know, even purists have got a Strymon Flint on their board. So that is modelling gear. That's digital modelling gear. It's just done in a way that is easier to interface with, I think. And I think that's actually where the future of this modelling stuff needs to get towards, and digital gear in general, so that instead of it being this thing that people don't want to get involved with because of the menus, that we can make quick changes, meaningful changes, and changes that actually we need to make very quickly. Performance pages on Fractal, or, you know, favourites within Helix. I use these all the time. Like, I've got my favourite sort of delay setting. I can quickly pull that up and glitz because there's just this favourites menu. There's still work to be done in this area, I think, but the time is coming.